The little cottage by the sea. There was a small cottage on the coast of Maine that almost nobody knew about. It sat at the end of a narrow road, surrounded by wild grass, weathered fences, and the endless sound of the ocean. The cottage wasn't remarkable. Its paint had faded years ago. The wooden porch creaked. The windows rattled gently whenever the wind blew in from the sea. But every person who stayed there seemed to leave feeling a little lighter than when they had arrived. On a quiet evening in late September, Clara unlocked the front door and stepped inside. She placed her overnight bag on the floor and listened. Silence, not the uncomfortable kind, not the kind that makes you reach for your phone or turn on the television. It was the soft, peaceful silence of a place that expected nothing from you. She smiled. This was exactly why she had come. For the past several months, life had felt unusually loud. There had been phone calls and messages. Even on quiet days, it had felt as though the world was speaking all at once. So when a friend had told her about a small cottage by the sea, where there was no television, unreliable internet, and little to do except rest, Clara had booked 3 nights without hesitation. Now, standing in the small living room, she wondered why she hadn't come sooner. The cottage smelled faintly of cedar wood, old books, and salt air. A stone fireplace occupied one corner of the room. A knitted blanket rested on an armchair by the window. On a small wooden table sat a handwritten note. It read, "Welcome. The ocean has been waiting for you." Clara laughed softly. She walked to the window. Outside, the Atlantic stretched endlessly toward the horizon. The evening sky glowed with soft shades of orange, pink, and blue. Waves rolled toward the shore with a rhythm so steady it felt almost like breathing. She stood there for a long time, long enough for the sun to disappear, long enough for the stars to begin appearing overhead. Later, she lit the fireplace, not because she was cold, just because she liked the sound of the crackling wood. She made a cup of chamomile tea. She found an old novel on a bookshelf. Then she wrapped herself in the knitted blanket and sat by the window. Outside, the lighthouse several miles away flashed slowly across the water. Once, twice, again. The world suddenly felt very large and very quiet. That night, Clara slept with the window slightly open. She woke once around midnight. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she heard the ocean, the waves, the wind, the distant cry of a seabird, and she remembered. She smiled in the darkness and fell asleep again. The next morning, she woke without an alarm. Sunlight spilled gently across the wooden floor. The clock beside her bed read 8:47. She couldn't remember the last time she had slept that late. Outside, the sky was perfectly clear. She put on a sweater and walked down to the beach. The sand was cool beneath her shoes. The air smelled of salt and pine trees. No one else was there. She walked slowly, not because she was tired, because there was no reason to hurry. She collected 3 small seashells. She watched a fishing boat in the distance. She sat on a large rock and listened to the ocean. After a while, she realized something strange. She hadn't thought about work, or bills, or tomorrow, or next month. She had simply been sitting. And somehow, that felt like enough. The second evening, rain arrived. Not a storm, just a gentle coastal rain. Clara sat on the porch beneath a blanket and listened to the drops falling on the roof. The ocean had changed color. The sky had become silver. Everything seemed softer. She made another cup of tea, then another. At some point, she stopped checking the time. The rain continued. The waves continued. The world continued. And yet, for the first time in a very long while, she felt no need to keep up with it. On her final morning, Clara woke before sunrise. She walked down to the beach one last time. The horizon glowed pale gold. The water reflected the first light of day. She sat on the sand and watched the sun slowly rise over the Atlantic Ocean. No music, no conversation, no distractions. Just light, just water, just morning. She stayed there until the sun had climbed fully into the sky. When she returned to the cottage to pack, she noticed another handwritten note resting beside the front door. She was certain it hadn't been there before. The note said, "The ocean never asks you to be more than you are." Perhaps that's why people rest so well beside it. Clara folded the note carefully and placed it in her pocket. Before leaving, she stood on the porch one final time. The wind moved gently through the grass. The waves rolled steadily toward the shore. The lighthouse flashed once in the distance. Then she closed the door. As she drove away, she looked back in the mirror. The little cottage grew smaller and smaller, but the quiet she had found there remained. And somewhere beyond the road, beyond the hills, beyond everything busy and loud, the ocean continued breathing, slowly, patiently, as if reminding the world that it was okay to rest.